Great. Welcome, everybody. We're going to first start with our main principles and values of Save Old Growth, and Joe's going to take it away for us.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just going to read these out real quick. So can everyone hear me? All good? Yeah, awesome. So number one, engaging in civil resistance. So we transform the emotional space of the public and communicate the existential emergency we are in through mass disruption, arrest, and imprisonment. So specifically, it's going to be small groups disrupting the Trans-Canada Highway. Number two, respecting Indigenous sovereignty. We give space for and respect Indigenous leadership and acknowledge their sovereignty over these lands. We understand that the logging of old growth forests in so-called Canada is part of a much bigger issue of colonialism and extractivism, and that Indigenous people have been leading this fight long before we began. At Actions, we look out for those at higher risk of violence from the police and the public, and ensure that everyone in our group feels safe, respected, and empowered. Number three, nonviolent discipline. We remain peaceful and calm when faced with violence. We show our strength through our resilience and sacrifice rather than ineffective toxic language. Number four, being in service. We reflect on our level of commitment and recognize that this is a major task involving great risks. We are honest with ourselves and with each other about how much we are able to take on and follow through with what we commit to. And finally, number five, respecting others. We speak to each other with respect and handle conflicts in a respectful manner. We listen to individuals who call us out and hold ourselves accountable for our words and actions and the impacts they may have. We acknowledge that as individuals, we are always learning and may make mistakes. And when mistakes are made, we pause, acknowledge any harm caused, educate ourselves, and work to do better in the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now, Badger's going to take it away with why old growth is so important and what the current situation is looking like for the climate crisis.
Okay, great. I've also put the principles and values in the chat there. They're on all of our social media. So if anyone wants to reflect back on those, they're out there in the public. So yeah, I'm not going to go too long on this, as I feel if you've signed up on a Wednesday evening to come to an event called Intro to Civil Resistance on the Trans-Canada Highway by a group called Save Old Growth, you're probably aware that there's a climate crisis going on. But we want to talk a little bit more about the campaign and just making sure we're all at that same level of understanding of what we actually mean when we say a climate crisis. I'm going to start by saying that this campaign is to get an immediate end to all active old growth logging in the province of BC. You might see a lot of us kind of talk or reference to Ferry Creek or specific blockades, but this campaign is for all old growth in this province. And I'm going to start with an analogy, but it's actually quite real. And that is that the earth that we live on is a gas chamber. And for the last 50 years, the government has been pumping a poisonous gas into this gas chamber. And now what we're doing on top of that is cutting down 1,000-year-old trees, these crucial old growth forests, which are the lungs, which are removing the gas from that gas chamber. That is kind of setting the realistic situation of what we are in this climate crisis. And we're all trapped on that earth. There is a quote from Sir David King, who is the former chief scientific advisor to the UK, so one of the top scientists in the country. And he has said off the record, but in a recorded conversation, that what we do in the next 3 to 4 years will determine the future of humanity and our species on this planet. So 3 to 4 years. And when we actually think about that, that's in terms of what we're doing on the climate crisis. So in terms of what we need to do to get our government to act, that's more like 1 to 2 years, because there's always going to be a bit of a delay. So yeah, our action on this is looking at Save Old Growth. So I'm sure you've probably all again seen the reports from Ferry Creek, from Old Growth Revolution, Lungs of Howe Sound, all these blockades coming up. There is only 2.7% of the old growth forest remaining in British Columbia, which is incredibly tragic and part of the colonial history on these lands. So we are working on this as our win that we need to start on. And again, that's the small thing to go into the bigger picture. So I'm just letting a few people in. When we talk about climate crisis, we are locked in for 2 degrees. Whatever any time a government says that we're going to beat that is just lies, and that should make you really, really mad. You can put your hand up if you're pissed off that the government are lying to you, but yeah, look at that every single day. Put it on your fridge if you need. That the government is lying to us. Whenever they say we're going to be underneath 2 degrees, it's not true. There's not a single scientist. There wasn't a single scientist at Paris in 2016 that said we're going to keep it under 1.5 degrees. And now there's not a single scientist at COP26 in Glasgow this year that thinks we can keep it under 2 degrees. So the government is continuing to lie to us. And so when we're locked in for 2 degrees, what does that actually look like? Well, 2 degrees on a global scale is actually 7 degrees inland in continents. And at 7 degrees, almost all farming and agriculture becomes unsustainable. When that happens, we know this from historical precedent. So this isn't us doomsday fearing. This is looking at what's happened in the past when there are crop failures and food shortages. That leads to starvation, famine, war, and conflict. And we, again, these are still kind of quite broad terms, but that collapse of civilization, that conflict is going to be affecting everyone. There's stats coming out from the Syrian war, which was escalated, if not started, due to drought and food shortages in that area. That obviously you kind of think war in traditional sense is, you know, men off in a battlefield, but obviously it's devastated the country, and it's coming out now as like increasingly large percentage of the victims of this conflict are women and children. So this is the situation we're looking at. Yes, it is incredibly important that we're saving these old trees for the local ecology, for the historical and cultural significance of them. But when we put into the scale that we're looking at mass starvation, the mass migration of millions and millions of people, war, conflict, and death, that is what we mean when we're talking about a climate crisis. So I'm gonna leave it there and pass it on to Zane, who can go into a bit more detail about the campaign.
Yeah, thanks. So if everyone could mute, that would be good. Yeah, Patty, I was wondering if you could mute.
I'm trying.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, just before I begin, I should just mention that Badger, you can also do it if you're doing tech. Or if you make me host, I can do it.
I think we're good. Go ahead.
All right, cool. So yeah, before I begin, I should just mention that there's a few things that we need to emotionally connect with before we talk about what needs to be done. And one thing that I think worth mentioning about the climate science is this thing called the carbon lag, meaning that it takes about 30 to 40 years for rising temperatures, for carbon emissions to transform into rising temperatures. And so all of the death and destruction that is going to come down the line is being locked in without us realizing it in real time. And one thing that we always mention, and I think it's important to mention, is that if people were dying in our neighborhood right now, we would all already be in civil resistance and in prison because we would be morally disgusted by what's going on. And that's what we need to intellectually and emotionally tackle first. And once we've emotionally tackled that and we've recognized what our responsibility is in the present moment, then we can come out, use our intellectual parts of our brains and come up with a strategy. And what exactly does my arrest look like? But once we've emotionally tackled with that, then getting arrested is not a big deal, right? I've been arrested 10 times. All the coordinators the 5, 6 coordinators of this campaign have been arrested a bunch of times. And the only reason I mention this is because Save Old Growth has come out of an experience of experimentation over the past year and a half, where many of us have been arrested many times, and we've designed many campaigns, and we finally had to sort of recognize exactly what our best bet might be in terms of pushing the government into making the kind of change that will get us our first win. And that's what it's about. It's about getting our first win. Because for the past 30 years, I think the climate movement has been extremely unstrategic in terms of what we should be doing, because we've been going out there and talking about systemic change, and we haven't been practical about how do we actually get there. And Save Old Growth is based on the historical examples of civil resistance and many successful iterations that have happened throughout the world historically, and especially the iterations that are going on now around the world in many different cases. So like in the UK, we have Insulate Britain, and in Germany, we have the Last Generation Hunger Strike, and we have Blockade Australia. And all of these people are going to be taking part in high-level civil resistance, all taking off in March. So it's going to be divided in 2 iterations, right? It's all about being strategic, and they're all pushing for minor demands so that we get our first win. And when we get our first win, that's when people will know that we can actually win using civil resistance as a strategy, and then we can ask for the moon. So in this case, we've sent out a formal demand to the British Columbian government about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where we have given them a deadline of January 9, by which they need to immediately end all active old growth logging. And if they don't do it by the 9th of January, by the 10th of January, we're going to start disrupting the Trans-Canada Highway during morning rush hours at different points, 2 to 3 times a week until we win. So we'll do the first iteration in January, then we'll pause in February to do recruitment, and then we'll begin again with the global iteration, which is going to be happening simultaneously in many countries. In the UK, they'll have thousands of people out by then, and Australia and the Czech Republic and France and Germany and many places. And we're all going to be doing it at the same time. So it's going to be a massive global event. And so just to sort of give some background, I'll give some examples of concrete examples of how the Freedom Riders did it, how Insular Britain is doing it, and how the Last Generation did it. But before that, I think it's important to just get into our heads that we don't petition genocidal governments, okay? We don't petition genocidal governments. When you're dealing with Adolf Hitler, you don't do a petition, right? When you're dealing with Mao, you don't do a march, right? You don't do a banner drop outside of Auschwitz. It's not only do you not do that because it's strategically unrealistic, you don't do it because it's inappropriate morally. It's morally inappropriate to do a march or to a banner drop when a genocide is taking place. And as Badger said, this is exactly what's going on. It's the greatest genocide in human history. And when we're faced with genocidal governments, I'll remind people what Hannah Arendt said in 1934. Most of you hopefully know who Hannah Arendt is. She went to France in 1934, and she said that people have 2 options when dealing with the Nazis in France. They can either enter into civil resistance or they can be complicit, because our options become binary, right? We can either be complicit or we can resist. And resistance means that the state places you under arrest. And if you do it again and again and again, then you ultimately get thrown in prison. And then if you do it again, then you get thrown in prison for a longer period of time. And the historical tradition is that when the state does that to you, you say to the state, do your worst. Because that's what civil resistance is about, is telling the state that there's nothing that the government can do to put fear in your heart, and because you're done with it. And that's what we've been seeing in the UK is happening, is that people have realized that they're willing to do whatever it non-violently takes to save the next 1,000 generations from extreme death and misery and starvation and mass rape and mass death, which is a natural byproduct of societal collapse. Because there's another thing that we won't hear in the traditional sort of nice NGO meetings and nice seminars, is that ecological collapse and societal collapse have concrete implications. And historically, that looks like mass rape and mass death and mass slaughter. So when we go and enter into civil resistance, we are doing whatever we non-violently can to prevent this from happening or to reduce the severity of it. Because if we don't do it, then the next few generations, next 1,000 generations, will spit on our graves, because that's what we're doing to them. So I'll just tell you what's been going on in the UK and in Germany. So in Germany, a few people around in their 20s decided to do a hunger strike, where they told the federal government and all the political parties and all the major political parties that they were going to do an indefinite hunger strike, and their demand is to get a public meeting with the leaders of the different political parties. And so that's the Social Democrats, that's the Christian Conservatives, whatever they're called, the Christian Democrats, and a few different political parties. And they went for 20 days, no one cared, right? 25 days, and then the press started being like, all of a sudden, by day 25, the press exploded. And they were like, all these 20-year-olds are on a hunger strike, and it's day 25 now. What are the political parties going to do? And by day 28, the leaders of the different political parties started getting in touch with them and saying, all right, fine, just like don't do it, you'll hurt yourself, it's not a good idea. And on that day, they said that they were going to stop drinking. And when they said they were going to stop drinking, the leader of the Social Democrats contacted them and said, all right, fine, we'll meet with you privately. We want a deal. So it's interesting, right? All of a sudden they want a deal. So like day 28, right? So it's binary. They don't care about it until day 27, and day 28, they want a deal. And on day 28, the strikers said, no, like we want a public Zoom meeting, which is what their demand was. So a private meeting won't do. And they were doing what the working classes had worked out in the 1850s, is that you keep going, right? You don't stop. If you don't just do a strike for 2 days, right? You just don't do a strike for 7 days. You do a strike and you go on for as long as it takes until you get a win. And so that's what they did. They said, no, we're going to stop drinking now. And when they said that, 4 hours later, they got back to them saying, all right, fine, we'll do a public Zoom debate with you after the election. So, and now they're going to mobilize more people for a bigger iteration in March. So you see how it works, right? Just 10 people who did this hunger strike and changed the national conversation. And we've seen this happen in the UK with Insular Britain. Not more than 80 people decided to go on the M25, which is their main highway system around London. So it's the closest thing that you have in London, which like the Trans-Canada Highway around Vancouver. So they blocked the M25 day after day, in groups of 5 to 10 people at different points, at different off ramps of the M25, and they kept doing it, and it got them national attention, right? It changed the national mood. Within 2 weeks, they got 77% name recognition, right? A leader of some NGO got in touch with them and said they've never heard of a campaign that got 77% name recognition within 2 weeks. But that's what civil resistance looks like, right? People initially were like, oh, I don't know if it's a good idea to disrupt the M25 highway. People are going to work. You're inconveniencing like ordinary people. But this is how you create societal change, right? You don't create societal change by doing bad things to bad people. No one cares if you like do a banner drop from the rooftop of a corporation. No one cares if you do something at a sawmill. That's the next fantastic action, but that's not how you change society. And what we need right now is we need to change the national mood, and we need to provoke national outrage about the logging of old growth forests. And we need to get a national conversation going. And if most people hate us, that's good, because that's how we know that we're making progress. When Martin Luther King died in 1968, 1969, he was the most hated man in America. He had a disapproval rating of 75%, right? So what they were doing in the civil rights movement wasn't about like being liked by the public, right? We're not going to be liked by the public. What we're doing is about provoking a national debate. And we're going to be blocking the Trans-Canada Highway. We've already got 2 groups of 10 people on the go in Vancouver. We've got 1 group in Victoria, and we're going to create more over the next few weeks, and then throughout the campaign, and then in February. So by the time we're in March, it's going to be a national sort of political crisis, because that's how we create change, is we turn it into a political crisis. And it's not like getting arrested in civil resistance it's not like getting a speeding ticket where everyone in society agrees that it's a bad idea to be speeding, and so you get a ticket and then you go to court and then you get a certain amount of punishment. With something like this, the government doesn't want to make a martyr out of you. That's what we need to remember, is that this is a political game. Recently, someone in Victoria sort of went over the tarmac and started spray painting at the airport. And when they went to court, they said, oh, your charges are still under review. And then when they went to court the second time, they were like, your charges are still under review. Why do they do that? They do that because they're scared, right? They don't want to put someone in prison for exposing the criminality of the genocidal government. And that's what we'll be doing. And that's what we need to remember is that when you get arrested in British Columbia, the police does not have the authority to charge you. They can recommend charges to the Crown, and it's the Crown that decides whether or not to proceed with the charges. So we are directly in engagement with the government when we do that. And the government has to decide whether or not to put 100 people in prison, whether or not to put 20 people in prison or whatever, right? And many people at this point are now prepared to go to prison. I'll be going in prison in February. On the 15th of February, I'll be going in prison for 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, I'll watch a lot of movies, I'll write a lot of stuff, and I'll meditate for many hours, right? And when I'll come out, I'll be ready for the next iteration. Because that's what civil resistance looks like, right? You get arrested, then you go to prison, then you come out, you have a break, you get arrested again, then you go to prison again. So, and if we don't do that, then we will not win, right? We need to be willing to do whatever it non-violently takes. That's just a sociological necessity now. It's not like some people can do petitions, some people can get arrested, some people can do marches, and we've got a space for every, like, a multitude of strategies. We don't have that luxury anymore. In the civil rights movement, like, you could have many different approaches, right? Because if you don't deal with segregation this year, you can always deal with it next year. It's like you can try really hard, and by the end of the year, if you're not successful, you can try again next year, and then you can try again next year, and then you can try again next year. The same with slavery, right? As obscene as immoral as that was, if you don't successfully end it this year, you can always try again better next year. But you don't have that luxury with the climate emergency, because every month that goes by and every year that goes by, it gets exponentially worse. And if the governments are on a 3 to 4 year timeline, as Sir David King said, we are on a 1 to 2 year timeline. Okay, that's what we need to remember. So the next 6 months are going to be crucial in whether or not we actually are going to survive in terms of mitigating this climate emergency. And this involves challenging activist dogmas, right? So this is not just another sort of activist NGO campaign where we sort of do something and then we pat ourselves on the head and then we go home. This is about challenging many activist dogmas about, we should just do a petition, or we should just do a march, or we should, even if we do civil disobedience, it should be like figurative, sort of symbolic, something at a sawmill or something like that. That's not what this is about. This is about provoking a national debate. And with Insular Britain, when they block the M25, they get on national television every single day, and they tell the people, we've got 3 to 4 years left, we've got 3 to 4 years left. So it's a democratic process of communicating the truth to the public. So they non-violently disrupt the public, and then they get on television and they tell people we've got 3 to 4 years left. And then people come up to the spokespersons on the streets and ask them, what's this about 3 to 4 years left? And so it's a democratic process of waking up the country. That's what we'll be doing with the Trans-Canada Highway. And the Trans-Canada Highway is the symbol of the Canadian economy right now. And that's what we need to disrupt. We need to disrupt the Canadian economy, and that's the Trans-Canada Highway, right? We just have to face that. And historically, if you're going to engage in practical sort of direct action, it's not just about symbolic, heroic action. It's about doing things that are like morally going to be seen as being in the gray area. So like when people used to go on strikes in the past, when people did general strikes, they didn't just go home, right? They didn't just say we're going to do a strike and then we'll go home. They said we'll go on strike and then we'll stop everyone from going in, because our demand trumps the inconvenience. Our demand is more important than the inconvenience that's caused. And when you're faced with the greatest genocidal government and the greatest crime in human history, a 30-minute delay in a commute in the morning is not a big deal when you're trying to tell your community that you're faced with a genocidal government. And that's what we need to do to create this national conversation. It's about prophetic, dramatic action, because it won't be liked in the mainstream activist community. Most people will get upset at this, not just in society, but most people in the activist community will get upset at it. And we just need to keep going. And I'll just end with the Freedom Riders example. There's a video, you can find this online, of this person who was beaten up while sitting down on the bus, and he was being interviewed, and the person interviewing him was like, so what are you going to do now? And he was like, as soon as I get better, I'll get back on the bus again. So that's called changing history, right? So his head was bleeding, and he was like, as soon as I'm slightly better, I'll get on the bus again. So what the Freedom Riders did was, it was just started with 4 people. and they went to Alabama. They didn't just go to New York or Washington. They went to Alabama, the most racist state in the U.S. at the time, and their bus was caught. It was white and black people sitting next to each other. Their bus was caught, and they were taken out. They were beaten up. Their bus was set on fire, and they were thrown in prison for a few weeks. So, and the images went around the country, and it embarrassed the whole country. And 3 days later, 24 people came down and went to prison. And then 3 months later, 200 people came down and went to prison. And then 6 months later, 430 people were in prison. And that's when the state had to issue legislation to desegregate interstate busing. And they got their first win in a long time. So it was by provoking this sort of a national outrage where when they got to Alabama and when they were beaten up, even the ambulance drivers didn't want to take them to the hospital. That's how much they were hated by society. Even the ambulance drivers didn't want to take them to the hospital. And they knew that they had to do that if they were going to be in the ballpark of creating change. So they didn't do this long sort of consultation process with the civil rights movement and with the mainstream community, activist community. 4 people decided that they were going to do whatever it takes. And then that prophetic action inspired more people to come down the road. So that's what we need to keep in mind, is that we need to individually decide whether or not we're going to be willing to do whatever it nonviolently takes, right? And it's a small sacrifice compared to what's coming down the road. People often say, well, I can get arrested because I've got a kid. I can get arrested because I've got a job. But when people were fighting against fascism in the 1930s, 40s, they weren't saying, I should only go for 2 weeks and then I better come back because I've got a job, or I'll only fight for 2 weeks, but I better come back because I've got a kid. And when people say that, that's profoundly insulting towards people who go to prison and get arrested and lose their jobs, and they have kids as well, right? So that's what you need to keep in mind, is that people around the world are going to prison, they're getting divorced, they're losing their houses, they're losing their jobs because they've decided that they're willing to do whatever it takes. And if we're not willing to do that, then we're as good as dead. And we need to emotionally recognize that. And when we emotionally recognize that, then we can provide a pathway to mobilization, which we will talk about near the end of this talk. So yeah, I'll just end with that. And yeah, there's a training on the 5th of January in Vancouver to make people, we'll do role play about how it practically looks like on the road. And I think other people will talk about that in detail. Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Zane. Now to kind of give you a more concrete visual idea of what we're planning on doing on the Trans-Canada Highway, Badger's going to play some videos from the group that Zane mentioned, Insulet Britain, who's blocking the M25 in the UK. It'll be about 10 minutes. Go for it, Badger.
Yeah. Before I start on that, a really good analogy which we've used in the past is just again recognizing the kind of difference between this and blockades, is that the blockades and woods are essential. They're our defense, but doing this is our offense to get a win. Otherwise, if we're constantly defending, we're always on the back foot, for this is us taking this into the streets. And if we can't get a win on this, something like saving old growth, which so many people are passionate about, then we can't get a win on anything. So we have to go all out on this. And then once we get that win, then so much is going to happen. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen now and show. I put a link to Insulate Britain in the chat already. And then yeah, there's lots of their videos on YouTube. Can we see that already? Yeah, okay. Can we hear it? No? What you can see about, oh, sorry.
Is the frame rate really low for everyone else? Maybe like unshare it and share it.
People see what's going on or not?
Badger, what Starling said was that the frame rate was really low, so it's looking really choppy when we watch it. And just so everybody knows, this is not the M25. This is outside a courthouse because a bunch of people were in court for Insulate Britain at this time. So just the roads will be a bit bigger. Just letting everybody know that.
Um, any better with that?
Still choppy, Badger. If you want to make me host, I can try and share it.
I'm just worried it might mess with the recording, but or I can stop recording and then share it with you.
Just roll.
With and okay. Do you want me to whatever, it's fine. Okay. So yeah, that'll be on the 5th, and we're gonna give some more information pretty soon on how you can register for that. So we're gonna need some exact numbers just so we make sure we're following all the rules and guidelines around that. And then after you've attended a chat, we're gonna put everybody into block teams. We're still kind of playing around with the name. We have a kind of fun bee theme that we're going with that we'll go into more depth on in a bit. So we're playing around with some fun names for our teams, but yeah, you'll get put in a block team. And then step number 4, you're gonna meet with your team, get to know each other, get to know your team's coordinator, and prepare for your first action. And most likely that first action is gonna be on the 10th. So that's super exciting. And then step number 5, once you know your team, you've all done the training, you know what you're doing, then you can begin your actions. And yeah, and we'll be here to support through all of that. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward once you think about it. And you've already completed step 1. So yay.
Yay.
Woo! Who's gonna go over what's up next?
The organizational structure. So basically how these block teams are going to work. I'm going to go through those really quick. You're going to get to see our fantastic bee theme here. So basically we're going to have block teams. So people actually going and blocking the Trans-Canada Highway of 5 to 10 people. Basically how this is going to work is we're going to have a queen bee, which is the group coordinator, basically holding the team together, looking out for everybody's well-being. The main communication link to the coordination team, which is us. We could also be queen bees or just regular bees. Ensuring that the block team have undertaken the training and preparation tasks, making sure everybody's feeling safe and totally airtight with what's going on, and then carry out the in-person reconnaissance of block spots, making sure they know what's going on 100%, where everybody's going to be, what the plan is. And just so you know, we're going to go into more detail with this in the training, and you can figure out what's better for you. We'll talk more about this. Like, this is not the only time you're going to hear about this. I'm going to dump a lot of info on you right now. Don't worry about it. We will go back to this if you want to come to the training, and we'll put you in a role, whatever works best for you. Then we have a deputy queen. The block teams are going to allocate 1 or more deputy queens who can be prepared and ready to lead the action as per the coordinator queen's role, either on day 1 or any other day. The block team should decide who does this role. Everybody should decide that, whoever they'd like. Then there's a support bee, who's our arrest support person, ensuring that everybody has all the necessary information. All the bees know and understand that they're prepared for the arrest process, take care of the bees' belongings on the day, and provide support upon release. Supporting the queen, action logistics accommodation, admin support, basically like our right-hand man behind the scenes bee, who's holding everybody together, police station support, maybe transportation. If you have a car, you can help people get there or get home from the police station. And then we have our worker bees, our regular bees, who are going to be just blocking the road, take responsibility for attending the training sessions and meetings, ensure that you're prepared and on time for actions. And there's not too much more you got to do than that. Just be there, get cuffed, do it again. Please speak to the queen if you need any additional support with your personal preparations. Then we have a legal bee, the legal observer bee, non-arrestable or arrestable, but most likely non-arrestable unless you give your stuff to the media bee, which will come next. So recording the whole action, taking notes as a professional witness, and sending info to the media coordinator, which is going to be one of us. And then there's also a media bee. So recording the action, recording the pre and post action testimonials for social media and stuff like that. Sending photos and pictures, photos and videos, to the media coordinator. This is really important because it helps hold the police accountable. It helps hold the drivers accountable. If they know they're being videotaped and recorded and everything like that, they're much more likely to be on their best behavior. And then we have the police liaison B. And the only person, yeah,
Police liaison.
liaison. This is the only person who speaks to the police. They inform that we are nonviolent, and of any medical needs that anybody might have upon their arrest or beforehand or after, making sure everybody's safe. The reason we do this is because, they need to know about, ambulance redirection, and then obviously people's like individual health needs upon arrest and stuff like that. And yeah, again, just full details and training and everything for each role will be given at our trainings coming up. One person can be more than one role. You'll hear all this again later, the training. But whatever sounds cool to you, whatever role you want to take on, go for it. Most roles can be arrestable, some are not, like arrest support isn't. Other roles, which can combine with different roles as well, as a first aid person, a first aid B, sorry. One person in each group should be first aid trained. Most of us are the coordinators, not me. I missed that day because I had a flu. Anyway, it's ideally the support B. De-escalation B actively works to keep the group, the public, and police calm, just reminding everybody like, hey, don't react, stay calm, look straight ahead, like don't interact with people. Generally a very calm under pressure person. Very calm under pressure. And then press interviews, maybe somebody outgoing, somebody who talks well in front of a camera, speak to any local press. And then extra support, which is optional if you want. People who can provide extra care, filming, speaking to people walking by, hanging banners on overpasses while we're doing our thing. And then maybe inform people in cars while they're in traffic. That can also be something that could be there for you as well, if that's what you want. Yay. And then, yeah, January 5th, we have an in-person training in Vancouver from 6 to 9 p.m. We'll talk about that a little later as well. You'll hear all this again, and you can get a taste of what bee you'd like to be. I can't believe I just said that. Okay.
Cute.
No, it's not. Okay, Starling's gonna do the explaining the overview of action design, basically where and what's really going on. And then I'm sorry, Eartha, we're gonna keep questions to the end, but if it's like super pressing, go for it. But we'll have time to answer all questions. Anybody? All right, hit it, Starling.
Hi, everyone. I am Starling. And yeah, I'll quickly overview how a typical action will look. So first, we'll meet at the location, which will be a few blocks away from the highway, about 30 minutes before. And we'll do check-ins, see how everyone's feeling, why we're here, go over the plan again, and maybe do a little de-stress exercise. I think we'll need it. We will be doing this with everyone's safety in mind, and therefore we won't be waltzing onto the highway and hoping cars stop like a lot of people think we are. We'll be walking onto an intersection that's at the end of an off-ramp. Media B we'll start recording the video and live stream. We'll simply press the button at the crosswalk and we'll walk into the crosswalk, stop in front of the cars, put on our high vests and unfurl our banners. And finally, the arrestables will sit down and block the road. The police liaison, the de-escalator, and the arrest support will stay off to the side, but everyone else will be sitting in the road with the banners unfurled. Next, the public will likely begin to attempt to remove us from the roadway. Like you'll see in the videos that we've sent, arrestables may get dragged off. The arrestables may calmly get up and sit down in the road again if they so please, and they haven't been placed under arrest yet. Once the police arrive, they will likely arrest everyone sitting down as quickly as possible. And I'll discuss that process and the next steps in a few minutes. But first, Joe will give a testimonial on their arrest experiences at Fairy Creek.
Yeah, just to be mindful of time, I think we could probably skip my arrest testimonial at Fairy Creek. It was pretty standard. You could just go over kind of more what people are going to be looking at here. And if people want to ask me personally about Fairy Creek stories, I can share that. But
Okay.
yeah, maybe we'll just save it till the end if there's time, just to go over all the like relevant stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. So I I personally decided to get arrested once I found out how straightforward the arrest process is. All 3 times I've been arrested, the process is quite similar. For the most part, the police in the city are generally more careful when arresting us because there are so many witnesses and cameras watching them. The following is based off my experience and others that have been arrested. To start off, you may be asked if you want to be arrested, and they'll stand you up, or they can drag you or carry you if you wish. They'll put you in handcuffs, take any belongings you have, and transport them with you back to the station in a paddy wagon. You can continue to take your medications you require while being held, but please let the police know and bring the medication in its original packaging. Upon leaving, like once you've been when you're being released, you'll be given some forms to sign, which contain a first court date, a fingerprinting date, and your release conditions. This whole process usually takes under an hour, and your arrest support person will be waiting outside the jail when you're released. Usually arrests result in community service and possibly probation, but we can't promise that it will for sure result in that. There are several services to help with the court proceedings, such as legal aid, that can help you in the court processes. It's not necessary to have a lawyer. You can request subsequent court dates to also be done by phone, and the request has been approved before. And I hope this has made getting arrested seem a little simpler and clearer for you. Thank you.
Perfect. So yeah, sorry, I was about to text in the chat. For people talking about Vancouver Island right now, we have different signal group chats, and we'll be having different block teams for those areas. So everybody who's here, we will most likely have a place for you to go, especially in BC. So yeah, basically we have one big general signal group chat for all updates and just main disabled growth things, regardless of where you are in the province or the country. Basically all of our information there. And Badger's going to put that in the chat. That if everybody doesn't know what Signal is, by the way, it's basically this encrypted kind of like WhatsApp or iMessage sort of text, video chat, call app that's much more secure, or like, yeah, basically more secure than any other thing. Not really more like much more likely to get hacked. It's not really going to happen with Signal, or it's more difficult. So we're going to put that in the chat now. It's an app, you can get it or download it on a computer or something. Yeah, we have Signal up there, and then Disabled Growth General Chat is the link down there. And then from there, you can message Joe. We'll have a little slide to screen share with really quick about how you can get more involved with specific areas. But yeah, if you're around like all of Canada, basically, you can always we can talk more about with you, like if you want to start something in Ontario or something. We can talk specifics with you on how you can create your own block team, and we can help coordinate it from BC. Like, we want this to be big. This doesn't have to just end in so-called British Columbia. Yeah, our email is in the chat there. Zane just put it up. And yeah, here is our want to get involved disabled growth. Look at this cute little banner. Love that. So this email, disabledgrowth@protonmail.com, or message Joe on Signal. There's their phone number right there with the following information. We'll also put this info in the chat for those who maybe aren't able to see the screen share here or want to quickly send an email. Zane put the email in there already. Perfect. And yeah, again, we have different smaller Signal group chats for all areas around BC. And then, of course, we'd love to talk to anybody who would want to do this in other places in Canada as well. And we can totally help you with that process and get you going. So yeah, we're just putting that in chat now. And then right after this, we're going to open it up for some questions. I think Zane's going to say one or two things before we do that. And then we'll have our closing round of checkouts, see how everybody's doing.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, if people could send that email or that message on Signal like right now, that would be awesome. We're just gonna give some time to do that like in the call, just so people don't end up procrastinating on that. So we want to get these groups together by the 10th so we can start really strong. So yeah, if you're wanting to get involved, if you want to send those messages right now, that would be fantastic, and we'll give some time for that right now.
And one more quick thing, just as a general overview, I'm not sure that you mentioned, Zane might be mentioning this in a few minutes, but I'll just say that we're gonna have a kind of a soft opening beginning thing in January, where we're gonna do quite a few blockades and then pause at the end of January to have February to regroup and recruit and train more people. And then what Zane mentioned in March with all these international groups, like in Germany, Australia, and in Britain, in the UK, and everything like that, we will begin again in March. After January, after gaining some national attention, and hopefully in January, we will be beginning with a bunch of other civil disobedience environmental groups around the world to really kickstart this in March, and the weather will be better, which is just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I can go. There's just one thing I wanted to mention, which is that we've said this in a few trainings in the past, but I feel like oftentimes during a talk like this, people often go like, well, they did that in the civil rights movement, but like, I can't really do it. They did that in during the suffragettes, but I can't really do it. I'm not a good organizer, or I'm afraid of arrest. But the thing to know is that like, tough, okay? You're all we have right now. You're all the cosmos has to offer right now. So we have to do whatever we can with the resources we have. And don't pretend that you don't have the power to win on this. Like, that's the biggest mistake and blunder we can make, is to pretend that we don't have the power to actually get a win on this. Yeah, so like whatever, like 40 people on this call, 40 of us absolutely have the power to bring down the British Columbian government. Okay. And far fewer people have done a lot more in the past. So like with the Freedom Riders, we had 400 people who like completely changed the social reality of the country. So this is about transforming the social space of the public by provoking this national debate and public outrage, because that's when we're getting somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just spending some time now letting people send their emails and their info to Joe, or the email address we have. We'll give it like 2 more minutes, maybe a little
Did everyone
less.
get that information? I can put it back on the screen again. Yeah, just emphasize, your next action to go from here is send an email or a message to Joe. And then if you can make it and you're in the area, then 5th of January in Vancouver, 6 till 9 p.m. at the Japanese Vancouver Language School.
Is it possible to record that for people who are not in Vancouver, who are all over the place?
Part of the first part will be recorded and online, and same with some of the legal session, but the part of it does need to be in person.
And I think it might also be possible for us maybe to do a recording of sort of the role play situations we're going to have. Just like core organizers here can set up a camera and start dragging people around a room, if that would make people feel better. We can send that out. But I'd have to talk to everybody on if their egos can take that. That kind of video. Okay. Oh, Stacy, if you'd like to ask your question. I think we're about time for questions anyway. Uncle Stacy, if you'd like to ask.
Yeah, Anin Boujou, my dear rascals. So I have to come from a place of truth and, because I care, and I don't, I'm not trying to make corrections. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do and believe, but
You're muted. We can't hear you. Uncle Stacy, you're muted. We can't hear you.
What is it that you're willing to do for those that you will never meet? We are the ancestors that we're looking for. We are the ones to be doing the job. Zane said it in a very nice way. Just want to remind you, somebody said they were able to bring their meds with you. It's not true. When we were in jail, my dear friend Jim, very sickly, couldn't bring in any of his meds at all. If you got glasses and you're going to the prison part of it, hopefully none of this will, blockading a road. Maybe that's a federal offense. I don't know if it's on the Trans-Canada Highway. You better have your glasses on with you, or you don't get any of that stuff. I don't know who's doing your NV nonviolent direct action things. Would you still guys using that lawyer, that guy who speaks as a lawyer who isn't a lawyer? There's some of us out here that have been doing this for so long, and we have such great input that we've offered ourselves. So, is it whoever's doing this training? Is it you guys that like have been doing this for a week and a half? There's some things that you have to know uh, um, to be arrested. You don't have to say a word to them. I have never signed any of their papers, even upon release from prison where I went on my bail conditions. I've never signed their papers. You don't have to sign their papers. You don't have to get fingerprinted and all this stuff. That's all about that colonialism. And my dear relatives, a lot of you have had that embedded in you for thousands of years, right? So to get arrested is the least thing that I believe that we could do for our grandchildren. And I like the idea of doing it in large groups, as Zane was saying. But I'm glad that your arrests were pleasurable. Use that privilege if that's what it's called. You can do it over and over and over again. And you're going to be the face to the majority of European descent that's here on Turtle Island. They're going to see that it's a lot different if you're darker skinned. It's a lot different than you're darker skinned, but there's no separation between us as human beings of skin color. I'm fucking looking forward to blockading the roads. I'm glad that you guys are still rascaling up during this whatever this season is called. I've been waiting for somebody to do something because sometimes you get tired of trying to, they say, organize things and that. So I love whatever it is that you guys are all pulling together. Give me a call. I can get some people out that they're even beyond arrestable. They'll run from the cops and make them chase you. What's wrong with that? Why would you be complacent going up and listening to them to read an injunction to you? Walk away from them. Run away from them, and then go up the street and sit down again. But thank you for just letting me share. It's good to see so many faces on here. And just another thing, that the forest is a beautiful place, but it's 70 times worse in the ocean. 70 times more oxygen comes from the ocean and stuff. So we'll just talk soon.
Thank you so much. Real quick reminder, we just want to let everybody know that I just got this reminder in the chat here. It is highly recommended and probably mandatory just for everybody's safety that you do attend a training before you can join an action, just so everybody knows what's going on. It's for everybody's safety, and just the whole organizational thing is going to be kind of going down then. So it would be probably the best if everybody could join that before they come to an action. And then we've had some more questions in the chat. Eartha said, do we have the permission of the hereditary indigenous peoples on whose land will we be on? Yes, so for Vancouver, if anybody else, by the way, a coordinator wants to answer this question, you're more than welcome. I'm going to do my best to. Basically what we've been saying. No? Okay, I'll do it. Basically, we have no, what's the word I'm looking for? We don't have direct disapproval, but we don't have public approval. We don't want to put any public negative attention on these groups for something that's as socially transgressive as blocking a highway. So it would be unfair of us to, well, our opinion is it would be unfair of us to ask the people that we're in contact with to publicly endorse anything we're doing, because we know that they would take a large majority of the bashing if they gave us direct 100% approval to do this. However, internally, there are people who, from the host nations, that haven't said no and won't publicly say yes, and have kind of given us the nudge, wink, turn a blind eye to doing this, which we will publicly say is what's going on. We don't want to, the thing is that we just don't want to put any negative attention on anybody who said yes in a private setting, because we want to take full responsibility for our actions, and it is the responsibility of the people who have wrecked this land colonially, in my opinion, to start doing things about it and protect it. My opinion. If anybody else would like to add any more input to that, please feel free. That is a very important question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I can add on to that. Basically, the conversations are being had. You know, we're having these conversations with the host nations and with people from those nations. Obviously, no one person is going to speak for an entire group. And then also, yeah, we're just not going to publicize those conversations and say, oh yeah, this person said it's fine, because yeah, they're going to take a lot of that heat, right? That's kind of all I have to add to that.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. If anybody else has any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat if that's more comfortable for you, or if I've missed a question in the chat, you can say it again, or just unmute yourself and ask. We'll also be here after the talk officially ends. If anybody has any questions, more of a private one-on-one thing, please feel free. Oh, Eartha, go for it.
Hi, what about, have you guys looked into the effectiveness of a rolling blockade? I'm thinking that that might be a good action on Vancouver Island.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm not sure I know the terminology rolling blockade.
Oh yeah, well, let's see, 3 years ago? In Ontario, in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en people, there were rolling blockades. And I've never done it myself, but apparently it's just people driving really slowly along a highway and disrupting traffic that way. I was just thinking people could meet like North Vancouver Island, people could drive south, and people from Victoria could drive north and then meet somewhere like in Nanaimo, and then turn around and go back. I don't know.
All right, Zane, I think you have a response to that.
Yeah. So just to like reiterate what was said earlier, this is like what we're about to do is super ambitious. This is about changing the national mood of the country. So like watching people getting dragged off the road is how you create social change. Like when the Freedom Riders were planning their campaign, they were explicitly talking about in the training, how do we expose the violence of the state? So it's about exposing the intrinsic violence of the genocidal Canadian government. And we do that by telling the state and by telling the public and by telling the media, they can do whatever they want to us, right? They can throw us in prison, they can throw us off the road, they can arrest us 100 times, but we're not going anywhere, right? You can't move me. You can do whatever you want to me. So it's about the power of civil resistance, about changing the social mood of the country, where we're not hiding from the government. We're saying you can do your worst, right? We're not going anywhere. That's the plan. So like people will sit down and yeah, it's straightforward, right? It's in the tradition of the civil rights movement. You sit down and you take it. That's what it's about.
Perfect. And then we have Tulip, I think. Starling, yeah, Starling just answered. Basically, Tulip asked, what are folks most often charged with after being arrested for blocking a road? And then Starling just answered, most often they are charged with mischief, which is just a summary charge. They may also be charged with intimidation for blocking a major highway. I blocked the main road to the Vancouver airport and got arrested. Like YVR, that big one. And they recommended charges for mischief, not intimidation for blocking major roadway. But we expect that they're also like, we'll get all of the legal info for you at the training. We have lawyers and stuff who are much more well versed in like how charges may increase over time or with different arrests. So that is something is to wait for the training as well, but most likely mischief, which is a small kind of criminal thing. And I also wanted to say that it's hold on, I just saw something in the chat that made me smile. I wanted to say it real quick. Hold on. I'll read it later. Does anybody have any more questions? Oh, Susan said, has anyone asked Indigenous leadership such as Stacy for their tactical ideas? I noticed this is often neglected and they have such amazing experience and creative input. Zane, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah. So like just like I mentioned earlier, it's not like Badger and I and Joe went into a room and came up with the design. It's like we're looking empirically at what's starting to work around the world. So we're taking inspiration from the Czech Republic, the UK, Germany, and it's not because it's from those places. It's about like what's working in getting a national conversation going. So if there's something better that works, then like we'll do that.
Okay, perfect. And then, sorry, somebody had their hand up. I'm looking at the chat right now. Is it Paragon? Paragon? If you'd like to ask your question.
Hey, yeah, it's Peregrine here from West Kootenay XR.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Erica.
Hi.
Yeah, it's good to see your face and hear your voice. We're living in a small town that is hours away from the Trans Mountain Highway. Is there any way that you guys could potentially problem solve us doing an action with you guys, but not being able to access that large highway?
Sure, yeah, we would love to get in contact with you and talk about like West Kootenay. What's the main road there? That would be awesome. Zane, go for it.
Well, I mean, if you're far from the Trans-Canada Highway, you could go to the Forestry Minister's office and you may or may not throw paint at the office and get arrested for that. So like there are ways to do high level civil resistance if you're far from the Trans-Canada Highway. Like I was in West Kootenay at the time, like a few months ago when we did some actions outside the Forestry Minister's office. So like that's a very clear target and it's very relevant. But I would only recommend that if you're far from the Trans-Canada Highway. But otherwise, if you're even a little close to the Trans-Canada Highway, I would encourage people to go there. Yeah.
And Peregrine, we can talk more about you if you want to like DM one of us on Signal or just like talk to us individually. What would be best for you in that area? That would be awesome. Really cool.
Yeah, I've been disconnected from my cell plan, so I'm not available on Signal right now.
Okay.
But I know you have been in communication with my group. The Revelstoke group out here is closer to the Trans Mountain Highway, and they are going to do an action in solidarity, I believe. And Zane, I think that's a good idea. We have done actions regarding the Minister of Forestries in the past, and we're looking at potentially art demonstrations. So we'll keep an eye out. Just want to know if that would be helpful and appreciated if we
did
something here, even though we're not connected to the highway.
That would be awesome. Yay. Great. Oh yeah, the comment that made me smile is just Olivia's comment up there. Also because my real name is Olivia. So that made me smile. And your comments really appreciated. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any questions? Again, we'll stay after. If you have any or any come to mind. I think we can start our closing round and checkouts. Basically, like put something in the chat, something you're excited about, grateful for, maybe something cool that happened if you had a bit of a holiday. Just something that you're grateful for, or just to end it on a high note. I'll start. I am so happy there's so many people here. I'm so excited. I'm still on break. I'm a university student. I'm still on break. And I don't want to go back to school. I want to do this because this is so fun. And you guys made me very happy coming here and asking all your great questions and hanging out, having a good time.
Let's just drop out together, Orca.
Pardon?
Let's just
we're dropping out.
Together.
I kind of want to do part-time. I'm like, why can't I just take one class, stay enrolled? Just
That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else wanna say
I
other
think
piece?
Starling had some bee jokes.
Okay, B joke. Go, Starling.
Okay, how'd it go again? Why did the why do the bees stay in the hive during winter?
Why?
Swarm.
It's so bad.
No. Wah, wah,
Yes.
wah.
Anyone else
Hi,
has any?
everyone.
Oh, hi.
My name's Jen. This is the first time I've ever been on a call like this, and I'm just walking outside, so it sounds like I'm panting. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed hearing from everybody. I'm a mother of two young girls, and so when I'm listening to everyone and just hearing about the urgency, it's really real to me, but it's also really real how my role at home is also so important. And so I just want to say that I hear the urgency, and I know that it's probably going to take a lot of really, really strong action, and it has my mind thinking about it a lot. I don't know what my role is going to be or what kind of bee I'm going to be, but I'm looking forward to January 5th. I'm not sure if there's actually going to be childcare on site for that training, or if I have to figure out childcare for that. But yeah, I'm really excited to attend. And just something really nice was amidst this pandemic, you know, today was a sunny, frosty day, and I made it out to Coquitlam River, and I just like hung out outside in the -4 degrees and had a fire and made some breakfast and enjoyed a cup of coffee with some birds. And something as simple as that can really be uplifting. So I would encourage you all just to try to get outside in solitude. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. There are so many really great like support roles too that people can have. Yeah. People have just like brought food or like come to hang out and just
That is such
yeah,
a
even
great
just sharing
idea.
nice advice like that to just go like a reminder to go outside, like that could be the bee that you are. That's super helpful. So yeah, thank you.
Zane, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So like in February, we'll need a lot of people who are going to be doing like the back office stuff of booking venues for talks and all of that, because we have a very ambitious target for February, which is to follow the Insular Britain model, where they basically organized 7 speakers who did 2 talks every week, and in a month they did like 60 talks, and they signed up 2 people to be arrested per talk multiple times. So I think that's the level of mobilization that will be needed in February and the first half of March. So if you want to help with that, then like that's something that we would need a lot of people for.
Awesome. Thank you.
Susan, did you have a question, Susan?
Oh, hi. Not so much a question as I just really wanted to say how grateful I am that all of you are sane. Because really, I think if I didn't have all of you amazing sane people in my life, I definitely would not be hanging on to my sanity. So you really are the link that keeps me sane, and so I'm just so grateful for that. And I will be printing off a whole whack of my get out of jail free cards from Monopoly to bring along. So I'm if you want one, just come up to me and I'll have them for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan.
I remember your just real quick, this is a really funny joke. Susan did this thing once where she had a salt packet and a battery in her pocket and took it out when the cops arrested her, and she was like, "Are you arresting me for salt and battery?" And it was the funniest thing that I like ever saw. Okay, anyway, Yeah, sanity is overrated. And real quick, somebody said, Diane said, if we are not in an action, can we be kept informed so we can participate later? Yes, of course. Or Zane said, we're going to be starting a newsletter soon. We also have that general signal chat that we can put in again, maybe really quick, Badger, if that's okay, just so people know. If you missed that by accident. That's how you can be kept most up to date. And also our Instagram will have lots of things rolling out as well if you're more of a Instagram person.
I just wanted, there's been like a few messages and things about like attending the training. If you have any accessibility requirements for the training, please let us know, including like childcare or dietary requirements, and we'll do our best to support you attending that. If you're calling in here from somewhere outside of Vancouver, hopefully we'll be kind of doing trainings on the road in February, or something we can be looking to do is bring you all into a group and then run online trainings, but with you like all together physically, so you can kind of enact it out yourselves with our support. So there will be loads more dates for those trainings once you're kind of in your groups. And yeah, the one on the 5th, the first part will be recorded, but if you can make it in person, then it's much better. Again, you're going to be forming into these groups, which is really essential.
Perfect.